during World War II, during that span of time, the Office of War Information tweaked 1,652 scripts of Hollywood movies. So over 1,600 scripts during World War II to make sure that it was portraying the U.S. in a positive light.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That is very surprising.
Right. Yeah. It's getting more people wanting to join the war, to feel like World War II was a benefit for the U.S. to be a part of, all of that. Mm-hmm. And post 9/11 as well, government officials met with Hollywood studio executives to align the narratives around what they perceive to be the events of 9/11. So we want all these movies that have anything to do with 9/11 to tell the same story that the U.S. government is saying.
Interesting. Do you think that there is something behind the narrative of anti-heroes in today's media? Because there's a lot of them. Do you think that could be some kind of government propaganda of, yeah, they did bad things, but they're ultimately trying to do good?
I don't know. I think it could be a little bit. The government has helped fund several Marvel movies, but isn't in the huge realm of funding a lot of superhero movies. But it could be a little bit of that. I would say that might be more of a cultural push from Hollywood rather than from the government.
That's super interesting, though, because it makes you want to look at every single movie through that light and be like, I know that there's the PC message already snuck in here, but is there also some kind of governmental subtext or influence that they're trying to have over me to make me lean more towards being patriotic in this specific area or being okay with the government taking advantage of me in this area. So it does make you think twice about everything. For sure.
Yeah. And then might be quite assured if it's a movie or TV show that doesn't portray the government in a super positive light that they didn't help fund it.
Yeah.
Like last night we watched The Ides of March, and it's pretty much just about a bunch of corrupt politicians being corrupt in order to become president.
Great movie, though.
You know, really, and so I bet the government didn't help fund that.
No, I don't think so. That was an independent film almost.
That's right. Another reason why the government might help, fund movies, like I stated before, is economic boosts. States that fund films create jobs for the local communities and promote tourism. Georgia's film industry has boomed as a result of all these tax credits. So a lot of films have been, filmed in Georgia. The state now is in comparison to California and New York as some of the most sought over locations to film movies and TV shows, just because of the tax discounts and tax cuts, which has been a good benefit to Georgia's economy overall. There can also be the idea of soft power. So globally, American media is viewed. It's like we don't really watch Bollywood films or movies coming out of China unless there's this one-off, like Squid Game, coming out of South Korea. The world tends to watch Hollywood movies, dubbed over into their own language or in English. So America has the ability, especially the government, to export values to the world, what is important. Yeah. And that could be like the value of democracy, individualism, freedom of expression. So there's can be that kind of government nudges behind the scenes of how we want the world to perceive what is right.
Which some of that can be super positive. Like be really positive if you're spreading the message of, hey, you should have religious freedom. In your country. That just should be a natural right you have. So it's interesting to think about propaganda or the government influencing movies in a positive way. Right,
exactly. So like freedom of expression, I think that's an awesome positive nudge. Individualism, not always the same thing.
Not the best.
Maybe. I mean, I like being an individual person, but I feel like we have lacked the idea of community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because American-made movies are watched all over the world, the U.S. government can have a hand in influencing people's perceptions and beliefs, not only for themselves, but of what the America and the U.S. is.
It's kind of America's version of TikTok, if you will.
Yeah. At a very high quality. Yeah, so here's some caveats. Like, it's important to mention that the government does not fund every movie or TV show coming out of Hollywood. The Department of Defense regularly rejects scripts they don't like. So one that's popular is the movie Independence Day. The government was going to give military support in the use of their equipment, but the writers wanted to keep in the script the mentions of Area 51.
Oh.
And so the government is like, sorry, we're not going to support you if you talk about Area 51. Which makes you think, what's going on in Area 51?
Exactly.
There isn't an exact amount known of physical federal dollars that have been given to funding movies. But the Pentagon currently has a information operations budget that's about $500 million each year. And so with that money, they can influence information. That's the whole goal of that budget. So some of that goes towards movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
500 million.
Yeah. And so our taxpayers, our tax dollars possibly went towards funding Top Gun Maverick or Captain Marvel.
Oof.
Yeah.
I was in favor of Top Gun, but not Captain Marvel.
Right. That one was a big flop. Yeah. So most funding is the use of equipment access, but not actually here's some money, but we won't make you pay taxes. So yeah. So I just wanted to mention a couple of popular movies that the U.S. government has funded and then kind of end there. Great. So most popular one is Top Gun. The original, it came out in 1986. So for that, the U.S. Navy provided F-14 Tomcats, aircraft carriers, and pilots for a bargain of $1.8 million in filming costs.
Oh man, are you kidding
So they did
me?
charge a little bit, but it would have been exponential.
Yeah.
They even set up recruitment booths outside of theaters so that once you got out of the movie, you could enlist.
That's
and
cool.
During that time, enlistments went up huge because
No
you're
way.
inspired. You come out of the movie theater and then sign up right there. The scripts were tweaked to avoid as many planes crashing in the story. So I think that maybe Goose dying was the only really prominent one.
Yeah.
And they always kind of make it where it's like user error rather than something wrong with the plane.
Yes, definitely.
And they kept the enemy vague in the movie. In the original script, it was supposed to be Cuba. But in the movie, they just talked about it as international waters.
Okay.
Just general.
Just international waters.
Yeah. And Navy recruiters saw a 500% jump in enrollment interest after the film came out.
That's crazy.
And then the second most popular one the government's funded is Top Gun Maverick, which came out in 2022. So for that, the Navy again supplied aircraft carriers, jets, and training for the actors who went through real flight prep.
Yeah.
So they actually trained them at NAS North Island military base.
Wow.
And the Department of Defense also had script input where it kept the enemy unnamed.
Yep.
For diplomatic matters.
Yeah.
So we don't really know who they're fighting. And the whole film was like a modern day recruiting poster. Applications to join the military also spiked post its release.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Another interesting one was Transformers, the original one in 2007. The Department of Defense really went all in with this one. They let them use F-22 Raptors, Blackhawks, tanks, and military bases like Holman Air Force Base. And the military also got like to flex on screen. Like even though the giant robots were like the main part of the show, the scripts were tweaked so that the military still looked like strong and competent.
Yeah.
So like the Transformers, Bumblebee, he's doing his deal, but like we got the military and their tanks and they're like almost at the same level.
Yeah. They're still doing damage.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. In that movie, there is a soldier who's part of the main cast throughout all of the movies, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not the last one or two, but I think that they probably influenced that. Like we have to have a soldier who's competent and looks good for the
like
military.
a partner with the Transformers.
Yeah.
Another one was Iron Man, the original one in 2008.
Wow.
So the Air Force Base lent over $1 billion in gear for them to use. Whoa. F-22s, Humvees, and they let them film at Edwards Air Force Base. And they loved Tony Stark's like defense contractor vibe, but they cut out all the scenes where the military tried to shoot him down. So in the original script, the military is like trying to take out Iron Man flying through the sky.
Yeah.
And so like, well, we can't have the military taking out a citizen. So they cut that from the movie. And then the last interesting one was Pearl Harbor. That came out in 2001. The Navy and Air Force provided ships, planes, and Pearl Harbor itself for filming. So it was actually filmed at the original location.
Whoa.
And the Department of Defense spent $2.3 million in manpower and equipment in order to help fund the movie monetarily. But they tweaked the script to downplay like historical blunders of where America didn't make maybe the best decisions. And they amped up the heroism of like the people a part of it, where in actuality, it was just a bunch of people really scrambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So some pros to answer kind of my question of should the military fund movies? I mean, not just the military, the U.S. government. Some pros are economic boosts for states, like I mentioned in Georgia. Film production creates jobs and can pump money into local economies. And then recruitment and public support for the military. I think that's a pro. Mm-hmm. So the military also has backed shows like NCIS and other ones where you're serving in, as a fireman, police officer, etc.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah. So like after Top Gun Maverick came out, a 400% spike in Navy pilot interest went up.
Wow.
So that's awesome. Some cons are like propaganda risks. The government being able to control scripts in order to allow you to use all their equipment kind of is a little bit of an ethical question. So in the movie Lone Survivor, the Department of Defense tweaked kind of the story to hide military flaws because it was based on a true story. Yep. The same thing with Zero Dark 30, where they really focused on torture's role in finding bin Laden. Mm-hmm. Another con is unequal access and it being a form of censorship because you only get government backing if the government approves of your script. Therefore, you might change your script to get that money.
Yeah.
And then this funding comes from taxpayer dollars. So we are funding those movies. And there's also some moral or ethical concerns because government-funded movies typically can kind of glorify war or even surveillance of American citizens as being a good thing because we found the bad guy. It could be like making torture seem heroic, glorifying war, and like these people are heroes and not really showing the negatives and horrors of war themselves.
Yeah.
So to answer my original question, I don't think that the government should fund movies. I think that it's cool that they allowed people, for movies like Top Gun Maverick to use their equipment. Mm-hmm. And so I can't say I'm against that or I'm against states giving tax cuts if you want to come film our movie there. But I feel like in the case of like Animal Farm or Zero Dark 30, where the CIA was like, we'll help you out if you kind of adjust the storyline. I think it kind of gets dangerous. And I started looking into, there's countries all over the world that have specific budgets just for funding movies. And especially Russia and China, like there's a lot of propaganda worked into that. So it's a slippery slope. So I don't fully support it. I don't think it's the worst thing, but I think that if you watch a movie that, wow, the government comes out as being pretty pristine in it, it'd be good to look into if they funded it. Yeah. And kind of make your decisions from there.
I like that. I think that I'm okay with it as long as they're open with their involvement. Like in the credits, they say funded by the U.S. military, funded by, the U.S. government, because then we know, there could be some twisting of the narrative to make them look better within this amazing story. Yeah. But at least we know. I didn't know any of this. And so I feel a little bit like I have to go reevaluate some of the movies I like.
Right, yeah.
Whereas if they were just open with it, I'd be fine. Yeah. It's kind of like when people try to slip PC messages into things. We're all good enough. We've all seen enough to be good enough at recognizing that, but nobody's recognized that there's military involvement or financing or backing behind some of these movies, twisting the narratives to make America look good. So just be open about it. Yeah. And I would be fine, but I don't like the sneaky nature of it.
Right. Yeah.